You asked Allah to change your life, and now you're wondering why everything around you is collapsing. Let me tell you something. Sometimes when you're holding on to the wrong things, Allah has to let them fall so your hands are finally free to receive what's meant for you. The pain wasn't to break you, it was to interrupt the version of you that wasn't meant to survive this next chapter. You didn't even notice it happening at first. You were changing quietly, not into the person Allah created you to be, but into someone shaped by fear, by wounds, by people who only loved you when you stayed small. You became quieter, not out of peace, but because you were afraid your voice would push them away. You stayed, not because your heart was full, but because you were scared no one else would understand your emptiness. You kept giving chances, not because they deserved them, but because you didn't want to be alone again. And slowly, without realizing it, you started losing yourself to protect what was never written for you to keep. You kept praying for peace, but every day your chest felt tighter. You kept asking Allah for ease, but you were clinging to people and paths that were never safe for your soul. You asked for love, but you were confusing attachment with purpose and survival with destiny. So Allah, in His mercy, let it hurt, not to break you, not to punish you, but to interrupt you, to stop the version of you that was being built by pain instead of purity, to stop the version of you that would have collapsed in the next season because it wasn't built on truth. He let the heartbreak hit. He let the door shut. He let the silence grow heavy because He knew if He didn't allow it to hurt that deeply, you would have kept walking straight into something that looked like love but was quietly killing your soul. You would have settled into a life that seemed okay but would have made you forget why you were even created. You would have kept chasing a future that felt familiar but was never meant for the real you Allah was preparing. So the pain came, hard, uninvited, all at once. And you thought it meant Allah had turned away. But no, it was the opposite. He was turning you back toward yourself, back toward Him, back toward the path where your soul could breathe again. Because the truth is, the version of you that needed to die was the one that forgot your worth. The one that kept trying to fix others while you fell apart silently. The one that kept giving your energy to people who only showed up when they needed something. The one that thought being loved meant being less. Allah saw that version and He said, no more. Because the next chapter He's written for you requires strength you haven't tapped into yet. Requires clarity you couldn't have while your heart was still crowded with pain. Requires faith that can only come after everything false has been stripped away. So yes, it hurts. It hurts to let go of who you thought you needed to be. It hurts to feel everything fall apart. It hurts to lose what you thought you couldn't survive without. But what's even more painful is staying in a version of yourself that was never meant to carry your future. This pain, this deep soul-tearing ache you feel is not your punishment. It's your rebirth. And every time it aches again, know that it's just another layer of the old you being removed. So the version Allah always intended can finally rise. You're not being broken. You're being rescued. You're not being delayed. You're being interrupted before you lost yourself forever. And sometimes that interruption is the most beautiful form of mercy Allah can give. You kept waiting day after day. You kept praying, hoping, asking for a sign, for movement, for change. But all you got was silence. No shifts, no clarity, just stillness. And in that stillness, your heart began to panic. You wondered, did Allah forget me? Did my du'as not reach Him? Why isn't anything happening when I've tried everything I can? But what you didn't realize was that the silence wasn't a rejection. It was protection. It was a divine pause. A gentle hand pressing on your chest, keeping you from walking into something that looked right on the outside, but was slowly destroying you from within. There was something or someone in your life that you were holding on to with everything you had, but it wasn't clean. It wasn't safe. It wasn't written to walk with you into the next phase of your life. It was comfort, but it was toxic comfort. It felt familiar, but it was quietly draining your spirit in ways you didn't even see. You were surviving, not thriving. You were attached, not aligned. You were slowly being poisoned by a situation, a habit, a relationship, a mindset that looked harmless, but deep down was pulling you further and further away from your fitrah. And so Allah kept you still. He stalled your steps. He let the doors stay closed. He let the answers stay hidden. He kept the progress frozen. Because if He had moved things forward while you were still carrying that burden, you would have taken it with you into the next stage. And it would have corrupted everything. He loved you too much to let that happen. So He made the silence louder until it forced you to stop, to reflect, to finally ask yourself, what am I still holding on to that Allah already told my heart to release? It wasn't a delay. It was a detox, a spiritual pause, so the poison could leave your system before it spread into your future. And yes, letting go felt unbearable, because sometimes the thing that poisons you is also the thing you once begged Allah to keep. But Allah knows. He knows what's ahead. He knows what you're not ready to see yet. He knows that some things, no matter how beautiful they seemed, were only meant to be temporary. So that silence wasn't empty. It was full of mercy. A mercy that said, I won't let you walk into what you're praying for with a heart that's still infected by what I removed. Sometimes we think the silence means nothing is happening. But behind the scenes, Allah is clearing the path, cleaning your soul, rebuilding your foundation, and removing whatever would have poisoned your peace after it arrived. So next time you feel stuck, next time you feel like nothing is moving, don't ask, why is Allah delaying me? Ask, what am I still holding on to that Allah is trying to remove with love? Because the moment you let go, the silence will break, the path will clear, and the poison will no longer have access to the new life Allah is preparing for you. You cried for a sign, so Allah let the pain speak louder than any sign you would have listened to. You were desperate, desperate for guidance, desperate for a sign, desperate for something, anything that could tell your heart what to do next. You raised your hands and begged Allah, Ya Allah, just give me a sign, make it clear, make it easy, make it obvious. You cried, maybe even screamed inside your soul, because you didn't want to make the wrong choice. You didn't want to walk away from something you were emotionally invested in. You didn't want to give up on a person you had wrapped your future around. You didn't want to accept that what you wanted might not be what was written. So you cried for a sign, but here's the truth. Most people won't say, Allah did send you signs, subtle ones, quiet ones, moments your heart felt uneasy, conversations that didn't sit right, doors that didn't open no matter how hard you knocked, people whose words sounded sweet, but whose actions kept cutting you quietly, a version of love that felt more like walking on glass than walking toward peace. But you kept saying, maybe I'm overthinking, Maybe it's just a test. Maybe I'm supposed to stay. So Allah, in His infinite mercy, sent you a sign you couldn't ignore. A sign so loud, so raw, so soul-shaking, that it would pierce through the noise of your justifications. He sent you pain, because pain is the one sign we all understand. Pain doesn't lie. Pain doesn't wait. Pain doesn't ask for permission. It just hits straight through the heart. And when Allah sends pain as a sign, it's not because He's cruel. It's because He knows how gentle you are, how much you love, how long you'll keep holding on, even when you're bleeding. So He sends the pain not to punish you, but to protect you from staying in something that looks fine on the outside, but is crushing your soul on the inside. The pain was the answer to your dua. You just didn't expect it to look like heartbreak. You thought a sign would be peaceful, but sometimes the most merciful signs are the ones that hurt the most, because they save you from things you didn't even realize were drowning you. You see, Allah knew that if He whispered it gently, you wouldn't listen. You would have stayed. You would have convinced yourself to try harder, to be more patient, to wait just a little longer. So He made it unbearable. He made the pain heavy, so heavy that you finally let go, because nothing else could have made you walk away. And yes, it broke you, but it also woke you. It brought you back to your knees. It made you return to the one who never left. And it showed you that your heart doesn't belong in the hands of creation. It belongs with the Creator. So the next time you find yourself saying, Ya Allah, show me a sign, know that sometimes the sign will be peace, but sometimes the sign will be pain. Not to hurt you, but to answer you, to free you, to realign you with the life that was always written, just waiting for you to release what you were never meant to keep. Because sometimes the loudest sign is the one that breaks you just enough to rebuild you. What you called loyalty to them was actually a form of self-abandonment Allah couldn't let continue. You thought you were being loyal. You told yourself, I'm just being patient. I'm being understanding. I'm standing by them like I'm supposed to. You wore your silence like a badge of honor, letting them speak over your truth, letting them rewrite your worth with their moods, letting them leave and return and leave again. And each time you welcome them like they never left, because you called it loyalty. But deep down, if you were honest with yourself, you weren't protecting them. You were abandoning yourself. You were loyal to people who weren't loyal to your peace, to moments that didn't protect your heart, to connections that made you question your value more than they reminded you of your purpose. And slowly you stopped showing up for yourself because you were too busy showing up for people who only clapped when you were useful but disappeared when you were in need. You silenced your boundaries. You hid your hurt. You tolerated the small cuts because they didn't mean it. Because maybe I'm too sensitive. Because this is just how relationships are. No, this wasn't love. This wasn't loyalty. This was slow spiritual erosion. It was self-abandonment disguised as goodness.